Most people think retirement planning starts at age 65, but the truth is the most important financial decisions of your life happen before that. Between age 60 and 65, you're making decisions that can impact the next 30 years of your life. And most people don't even realize they're making them wrong.
And so today, we're going to break down why age 60 might be the most financially dangerous age and how you can make sure you get it right. Welcome back to the On Track Retirement Show, where we want you to make smarter financial decisions as you approach retirement. My name is Jay Karate.
And I'm Pat Schmidt, and welcome back. We got another great show for you, but you need to understand our singular purpose is to help you get on track, stay on track, and have a confident retirement.
As we talked in the opening about this 5-year window, 65 is kind of that common area of goal, if you will, that people think 65 is retirement. What does that look like? How do we get to 65? And we'll start planning right when you get to 65. 5 years in front, which is why we're pushing 60 a little bit hard, is that 5-year window between 60 and 65 really has paramount importance as far as retirement planning goes. So if you're thinking 62, it could be 57 or whatever those dates are. But we need a little bit of a ramp up time before we get to that retirement age.
Yeah, we're focused on 60 today, right, Jay? Because a lot of folks target 65 as that retirement age. But if your goal is 60, 55 is the age that's paramount for you. 70, 65. So first and foremost, if you're out there and maybe you haven't necessarily sat down with somebody to try to get understanding or clarity of that retirement timing, that's a great place to start. But then I want to follow that up. Today, we're going to focus on, we call it the transition plan, right? Life is full of transitions in so many ways. And where we see a big disconnect or a big miss, people have done a great job of saving. A lot of people have done a great job of saving. I can't say everybody has, but folks are working towards retirement and they're making sacrifices, making financial contributions, perhaps to their retirement plans, 401ks, what have you. But there's a lot of broken things that happen within the process. And man, Jay, if things get missed in that lead up 5 years before retirement, it can certainly impact the next 25, 30, 40 years, how long their retirement might be.
It's interesting that our retirement time is not as long as our work time, but it's not unusual to have it be 50 or 60 or 75% of our work time. So here's the story. We have a client, let's say a $2 million portfolio, and they come in, he comes in, she comes in, whoever it may be, they come in and they say at 65 and they go, we have $2 million portfolio, but it's positioned just like it was when I was still 45. Where are the pitfalls? Where are the potholes they're running into?
Yeah, so they could be a great saver, could have been disciplined, could have made a lot of smart financial decisions leading up to that point. But the transition, the mindset has to change, right? There needs to be a shift in understanding of risk. There needs to be a shift of income planning. A lot of times folks are missing those elements. They're also not focused on things like taxes, healthcare realities. So that's really where we want to spend time today is how can you in that lead up time best make that shift, right? That make it a glide, if you will, absolutely. In that 5-year shift as you move to retirement. Having that glide shift can be paramount. And there's a lot of areas that we can really look at and focus with folks leading up to that 5-year stretch.
We can. And what we like to use, and we look at this on a regular basis, this is not just a one and done conversation that we have. We use an acronym called IMPACT, and it spells out IMPACT. So the I is an income plan. We need to have a reliable and predictable income when we're in retirement. The M would be a market safe plan. So Again, a myth is that I don't want to be in the market, but we need to understand what does that exposure look like. The P would be a proactive tax plan. Again, past episodes, we've talked about the impact of taxes that often aren't looked at. So we have to understand our tax situation. The A would be asset protection and estate planning. Lots of things to unpack here. Long story short is we just don't want to leave a mess for those people that are coming behind us. And then we go into the C, which is care plan, your health care, long-term care, things that people don't really know what they need until they know they need it. And oftentimes that's way too late. And then the T would be considered transparency or vulnerability. We want to be completely transparent, low fees, understanding exactly what it is when you're working with a retirement advisor versus a financial planner or a wealth manager. What is it that we're going to work for? And completely, again, pull the curtain back on this so people know who we are, what we do to benefit their world. And as we work through that impact, now we're able to start that plan, that glide path that you were mentioning.
So a lot of folks, they get to retirement, they think that they'll just make the shift and maybe start doing some of those things once they get to retirement.
Right.
And there's the lead up to that where you need to make sure that you're getting your ducks in a row, if you will, specifically as it relates to those things. And we're going to spend a moment talking about the significance and importance of each of those, that if you're in that window, that these are the things that you need to be mindful of and considerate of. And let's call a spade, Jay. The folks that may be listening today, maybe, have some of the same anxiousness of folks that we've met with over the years for the very first time, right? Those worries of running out of money in retirement. I was on a Zoom conversation the other day, and first time meeting these folks, and literally within 5 seconds, she's like, "Pat, are we going to be okay?" And of course, I didn't know the first thing about them outside of their first names and last names and where they lived, and obviously that led to the conversation of us asking some questions and gaining great clarity and understanding of their goals, their worries, their concerns. And the beauty of it is they're right in that same sweet spot. They're looking to retire. They want to retire sometime in the next 4 to 5 years. So good on them for taking action steps to get things in place. Far too often we've met with folks that, hey, I want to retire now. Am I ready? And unfortunately, because they've missed some of these things that we're going to spend time talking about today, that's delayed them being ready and able to retire. So, we've talked in the past too, that retirement confidence score, Jay. Mm-hmm. That's that retirement confidence score that we're able to put together for folks as part of the On Track Retirement Review. And that's on a scale of 0 to 99, 99 being the highest score. But really what drives that score, what drives the highest score possible, are those 6 key components. It's having a great income plan, market safe plan, all of those areas. Call them the 6 pillars, call them whatever you want. But those are the 6 key components that every great, not good, but every great retirement plan needs to have. So let's talk about the income plan first, because it is the bedrock of every great retirement story.
It is. As much as we would like to think that when we retire, when we separate from our income, myself, my spouse, whatever that looks like, when we separate, we're going to have the exact same level of income that we had when we were working. That would be great. Sometimes, and then on an odd situation, we find that it is the exception rather than the rule when we find that would be the case. So consequently, if we're living at a level of X, but our income is now down at S or T, and we're not quite where we need to be, how do we get to that same level of income? So now we have to start relying on some of our investment strategies. We say often that you need a reliable and predictable income. Reliable, it's going to come every single month or every quarter, whatever you set your budget up to receive those funds. But Social Security and pension, those things that come in on the same day every single month. The Friday before, if it happens to be on the weekend. So we're a little bit proactive that way as well. So it has to be reliable. We know what's coming, but also predictable. Now we can set up our budget. We see what makes sense. Now we can go into the situation and go, okay, can we afford this? Do we do this? Now we have the opportunity to live life based on principle versus pocketbook.
And the football field analogy here, right? When you get to within 5 years of retirement, you're in the retirement red zone. And on the football field, that's when you're inside the 20-yard line and looking to go in for a touchdown. And some folks need to figure out, hey, am I in the red zone? Or am I still at midfield? Or heck, am I still on the other side of the field? Yeah. Some folks, they better punt because they haven't done anything, right? But so we're talking about folks in the retirement red zone. So certainly income. A lot of folks need to figure out, Jay, when's the best timing for Social Security? How do I elect a pension that I have available to me and put that in place?
Or my spouse if I pass away.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for so many folks, as you just made mention, that's not enough. So now they need to position their retirement dollars to be set up to create that predictable, sustainable income that they can't outlive. And that's what passes that retirement readiness test, is having that in place.
The piece that brings, it can just not be underestimated. When we work, we get raises. We have an increase, even if it's just a cost of living increase, but something to keep up with the pace. We need to know that's going to be there at 65.
Yeah, if you want to get in the retirement end zone, you got to get income and got to get income right. And now once income is right, listen, life changes. So many things are going to change. There needs to be flexibility and those kinds of aspects of a plan, but get income right. And now everything else can breathe and be positioned appropriately around it, which, even tax efficient, income is certainly something to be mindful of. Let's go to the M of that acronym again. So market safe planning. Speak to why that's so significant.
We understand that a myth in retirement is, well, I don't want to be in the market. Well, we have gains in the market. Again, we have losses as well. So now we have to have some level of mitigation as far as how much exposure do we have so that we can still capture some of those upside opportunities. But then what do we do to be careful not to explore that downfall that not only can, but will take place? We just don't know when. I wish I had that crystal ball. I promise you I'd share it with people if I knew when that was going to take place. Just don't know. But because it's there, we're trying to figure out a little bit more clearly how much, what is the ratio? How does that work? How are we able to make sure that we aren't overly exposed? Too oftentimes, Pat, we find folks coming in who have 75, 80, 85, 90, 92% of their assets in the market at 65 or 67 or 70 years old. And when we experience that downturn or correction or crash, that's gone, and there's no time to recoup those dollars. Yeah. So those parameters around there, that guardrail, if you will, the parentheses to say, here's a good market safe plan. Now we have the opportunity, not only with that income, to say we can still likely outpace our spending, which is good. So always keep that growing a little bit, but not expose ourselves to too much so it's just gone.
Sure. And there's the contrary to that. There's moving to investment types or strategies where there's not growth. Right. So you still have to have that balance of growth and not, you can put it in a coffee can and bury it in the backyard, but as inflation and things arrive, like you're going to run out of money if you do that. Right. So it's taking some sensible amount of risk. There's the old adage of 100 minus your age being the appropriate amount of risk. So if somebody is, say, 65 years old, 100 minus 65, that means, no more than 35% of their investment plan should be taking on those risky investments, assets that can go backwards when the market goes backwards. And to your point, far too often we see people taking 2, 3, 4 times that type of risk. And that can be really, really scary, because if you're drawing income off of market risk investments, man, that can be a nasty trap as it relates to how long your money's going to be able to last.
It can be a very nasty trap. And just like the coffee can that gets buried, that trap gets rusty and it falls apart. That's the only thing that we can explain is it will fall apart at some point without a good market safe plan. The P in impact is proactive tax plans. Chat about taxes a little bit.
Yeah, so you'll get me on my soapbox. We've obviously done a couple podcasts already, a couple shows already tailored to the importance of tax planning, but it's the proactive, I'm going to emphasize that, proactive tax planning, right? So starting to move those 401ks, those traditional IRAs, those dollars, Jay, that haven't been taxed yet, and starting to convert and position those into tax-free types of accounts. Roth IRAs would be an example. Conversions. People often ask, well, I can't put money into a Roth anymore because I'm retired. That's not the case. You can do conversions, which is taking money out of those pre-tax accounts at a smart, sensible tax rate, being mindful of IRMA, being mindful of tax rates, and turning around and putting those into things like Roth IRAs where those dollars can grow tax-free, and avoiding some of those nasty tax penalties that can happen down the road if you are just following Uncle Sam's tax plan for you.
The importance of taxes, we've beat this drum pretty loud and think we always will, because it's not something that is over understood, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. What happens with taxes? The old adage, there are two things are certain in life, right? Death and taxes. So we're not talking about death, but taxes are very, very real. They're going to take place. They will take place. There are different levels that we have to pay. Okay. If we don't understand what this looks like for our own savings account, checking account, investment account, whatever account where these dollars are held, if we don't understand the next step implication, I think we're setting ourselves up for failure. I think that oftentimes, not necessarily in a negative way, but pride at some point comes in, I don't think I need to ask for help. I don't really want to ask for help in any of these areas. Help is actually a sign of strength, not weakness. Absolutely. Realizing I just don't know what I don't know. Have that intestinal fortitude to go, I just need some help. Could somebody help me with this? And then see what that looks like.
Well, and Jay, leading up to, retirement, there's some smart things that can be in place, being proactive, start positioning those dollars. It's not that, hey, I'll worry about taxes when I get to retirement. There's some awesome things that can be done leading up to it to make sure people are positioned properly, for increased tax rates in the future. And if you're doing some smart things on the front end, that can also make the income you're living off of far more tax efficient. So, I is the income plan, M market safety, P is that proactive tax planning, and all three of those can work elegantly. I don't know if that's a word, but elegantly together. If not, Adam will, take off the
seamlessly
part of it.
How about seamlessly?
Yeah.
There you go. Seamlessly.
The A of the word impact here is we're talking about the on-track retirement plan is asset protection and estate plan. And that's highly important, making sure that folks are doing all things possible, buttoning up their estate plan. Again, it's not an area where people want to spend a lot of time talking about where's all the things happen if I pass away. But, if you love your spouse and love your family, don't you want to make sure that it is a seamless process as much for them as possible? What we mean by that is, putting all things in place, documentation, et cetera, to make sure that you're avoiding probate, you're avoiding unnecessary taxes, and that when you do pass away, things continue to work on with purpose for your spouse and for your family one day. And then the C, moving along in that acronym here, is having a care plan, right? And we think about having a care plan that is being prepared for all the healthcare realities that are out there, Jay.
And this is a real hot button for me, because we don't know what we need to know about our health until all of a sudden there comes along and we find ourselves in the emergency room with issue, or it may not be so sudden or chronic, or maybe more chronic that way. And then all of a sudden there's this real slow drip of something that might come along. As we're talking today about 60 versus 65, or that 5-year ramp up period to that, one of the beautiful things about long-term care in particular is we can have a much longer runway and be prepared for it if we ever need it. And so if we aren't having that conversation, because then all of a sudden, we'll deal with it when we get there. Too often times when we get there, whatever there may be, the cow's out of the barn. There's nothing we can do at that point. And there's, to me, seemingly nothing more helpless than kind of looking at, if only I had. And I had the opportunity to, but I didn't. And so when we make decisions in life, I think there's the decision of discipline and the decision of regret. Discipline's a short-lived pain, if you will, whereas regret is a long-term pain. So in these financial decisions, we get the opportunity to choose our pain, either the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And when it comes to long-term care, just even a little bit of discipline can go so far when it comes to long-term care. Nothing can destroy somebody's nest egg like long-term care expenses.
Yeah, you might be thinking, well, just the HOPE plan. Hope you don't need long-term care, which is, home health care, assisted living, nursing home care. Those are costs that Medicare doesn't necessarily pick up,
right,
and people have to pay out of pocket. And there's some great strategies and tools that are available for folks as it relates to long-term care. We're blessed, Jay, our retirement group with a national presence. We have some great folks across the country that really know this space really well. And we've been able to bring some not just great education to a lot of people out there as it relates to having plans for healthcare, Medicare, long-term care, but implementing those things to make sure that people have peace of mind. And it's not, I'll just say it this way, it's reckless going into retirement or being in retirement if you don't have a plan for those things. Just absolutely reckless, because there is nothing that can upset somebody's retirement, that confidence score, or most importantly, their confidence, than the costs that are associated with healthcare.
It is. I enjoy in my own personal world playing this game. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's finances or just other things. Well, what if? What if? Well, what if our thought process is my spouse will care for me if I need some type of long-term care? What if I don't have enough money? And again, we may not be able to answer all those questions, but what if your spouse would pass away before you? What's plan B? There's lots of chatter around about never have a plan B because plan A is the most important thing. And why have a plan B? That means you think plan A is not going to work. I'm a firm believer in a plan B, because even though we may have these best plans and we understand what may work well, that doesn't necessarily mean that it will, because there's always something we don't know. In every situation, there's something we don't know. And so trying to learn what I don't know is one of the hardest things in life to do. So if we're able to plan for long-term care a little bit more proactively, I think in our impact world, we could probably have 6 different Ps and be proactive with our income plan and proactive with our market safe plan. But if we were proactive with what that looks like with long-term care, I think it provides peace not only for me as potentially the patient, but those people in my sphere of influence, and they know what that plan is, and they know what happens if something happens to husband or dad or grandpa, and they can go, okay, we're going to be able to figure this thing out. Yeah,
certainly making sure that you have a plan for that risk. And no one has ever said, I did it too early.
Right.
It's always, I wish I would have known about this sooner. I wish I would have implemented this sooner.
Yeah.
And far too often people haven't and have seen the risk and the threat that can happen. And then finally, Jay, our last one of our 6, if you're just tuning in, you're coming over from Matlock or whatever you might have been watching, we're running folks through, really the transition strategy of the things that you should be mindful of 5 years leading up to retirement. We use the age 60 because 65 is a target for so many folks. And these are the 6 key components. So it's having a great income plan, having a great market safe plan, having a proactive tax plan. It's having an asset protection or estate plan. C is a care plan. And then finally, the T is having transparency, specifically as it relates to investment fees and cost. There's an opportunity there for folks to get education and clarity on where those fees and costs lie within your 401k, within your retirement and investment accounts, and knowing that they're not just maybe advisory fees that you're paying, but there's also internal fees and cost in there as well that can deteriorate your returns and can deteriorate the performance of somebody's plan.
And I don't think, again, that we can overemphasize how important this is, because this trick typically is even more silent. I think we know, if we were just talking about healthcare, we know at some point down the road our health would deteriorate. We know kind of what that end game looks like at some point. But this understanding of fees that would be in our plan that we may not even know anything about, but we have these questions that don't have good answers. Why is it that if the market went up X, but I'm only making Y, what's the difference there? Why is that not happening? And that's not always as clear. And again, we use the letter T for transparency because we want to be transparent. I don't think vulnerability is something people arbitrarily go, boy, I really want to be vulnerable. Yet with that vulnerability comes accountability and an understanding of, I just want to be forthright. I know that I'm human. I can make a mistake. I try really hard not to. I know I'm capable of that at some point. Yet in that process, if I'm trying to be intentionally vulnerable, intentionally transparent, and we lay it out all on the table, then we automatically have answers as opposed to questions. One of the hardest things to know is what we don't know. This answers some of those questions on the front end. What would those advisory fees be if I'm working with a wealth advisor? Well, we might say it's 1% or 1.25% or 1.35%, whatever you get from that information. There are underlying aspects, as you brought up, whether they're internal fund fees, everything that goes into this expense portfolio that now is, for lack of a better term, robbing some of our wealth that we have and that we've accumulated, and it's just disappearing because we don't know any better.
Yeah, the percentage-based fee model is such a financial advisor-driven type of way to charge fees. And where the financial planner, that fee model may make sense in helping people get to retirement, where people really need to be mindful of is those fees and costs now as they transition, as they get into retirement and start to prepare to take those dollars, because as they're taking those dollars out of their accounts, if they're taking out, say, 3, 4, 5% a year to live off of, but there's also another 2, 2.5, or 3% that are also leaving the investment plan due to those fees or costs, boy, that can really erode things in a really quick period of time. If you're between age 60 and 65, I do believe that there's some questions that you should be maybe asking yourself. Number one is, do I have a tax strategy, or do I just have investments? Do I have an income plan, or do I just have a portfolio? How will Medicare be affected when I get to retirement? What will my health care look like? What happens if the stock market takes a significant drop between now and when I retire, or even when I'm retired? Am I easing my family's burdens as it relates to taxes or rising potential healthcare realities in the future, Jay?
Those things are very legitimate and overlooked. I've said before, and I'll say every single day, that today I'm as old as I've ever been. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. Now, if I can use yesterday's experience to give wisdom for tomorrow, I think that I'm setting myself up for failure. That's the same thought process that we like to have in the minds of those people in or near retirement. So they have the opportunity to see a little bit more about what's beyond the edge. How do we make that crystal ball that's maybe a little bit foggy, a little bit more crystal clear? We, again, don't have the opportunity to say, well, this is exactly what's going to take place. I think there's a level of liability that comes into that. However, if we do have a plan, working a plan always seems to be a good idea. When we're talking about retirement and we have a plan that's very strategic, it's very systematized, it's very clearly understood what the next step would be. Now, all of a sudden, in between those meetings, in between those opportunities, we have a chance to bring about more clarity, help folks have more confidence in their retirement so that they can chat about, okay, this is a plan that I have. They have conversations around the supper table at times to kind of go, yeah, we know that everything's going to be okay. What's next? What's our next vacation? Where are we going to go?
Yeah. So I mentioned that couple that I met via Zoom virtual meeting not that long ago, and we've met a couple times now. In fact, they're moving forward and assisting. But by the end of that first meeting, she opened up with, "Are we okay?" And of course, it was understanding more of their goals and situation, but then sharing with them, hey, listen, we're going to put together an on-track retirement review that's going to provide you clarity in how to best step through all of these areas. And it was funny, at the end of that, this is exactly what we've been looking for. They'd been working with a financial advisor who loves to get together and talk about stocks and what mutual funds, but where they really saw things missed is a lot of those areas not being talked about, but more importantly, having a coordinated plan of having all of those things work together, Jay, because a lot of advisors out there would be like, well, I can go direct you to this person to help with, some of those healthcare questions, and this person to help with taxes, and this person that will help get your estate plan in order. But now all those things are operating in their individual silos and nothing is working together.
There are three typical words I think that we hear on a regular basis, and that are three different phrases, or two different phrases, each with three words. One is, I don't know about whatever it may be, taxes or estates or transparency or healthcare. I don't know. After we have a chance to walk people through, after we have a chance to bring some understanding into the world, at the end, it's so comforting to hear them say, this feels good.
Yeah.
This makes sense. And it provides that exhale financially of, okay, I do need to work maybe a little bit more if that's what the answer is. And that could be the answer. Or we are in a good spot. Let's start executing this plan. So when retirement day does come, we know what Social Security looks like. We know what pensions, if they're available, look like. We know what all these different financial understandings are. So now we can execute this plan. And then we review the plan on a regular basis. Let's see what the next item to fall is that we need to look at, that we can put in place and adjust as we need to going down the road. We constantly have to adjust. If you're in an airplane, you have to adjust a little bit here and there. Yet understanding what's possible to have somebody in that age frame say, this feels good.
Yeah. Here's the truth, right? Retirement isn't just something you drift into or step into the day that you want to walk out of the workplace for the last time. It's something you prepare for intentionally, and the decisions that you make 5 years leading up to retirement are massive, monumental, if you will. They'll determine whether retirement feels confident or whether it feels uncertain, whether it feels controlled or whether it feels reactive. So whether you're still trying to figure out your retirement timing or you're getting close to retirement for yourself, it's never too late to start having clarity and understanding. If you're out there, and whether you're retired, whether you're leading up to wherever you are, we're passionate, as you can see, about being able to help people. And we have a phenomenal team of folks that are experienced and seasoned and experts in so many ways across these areas, and can bring you peace of mind and clarity. If you love to learn more about your retirement, about any of these areas, or how all of these can work and benefit you, we would invite you to visit myontrackretirement.com, where you can schedule a complimentary on-track retirement review. This is a pressure-free conversation designed to give you transparency, clarity, and confidence as it relates to your retirement.
So thank you. Thank you for the positive comments that are coming. Thank you for your input and your thoughts. Thank you for liking and subscribing and following and all those things that need to take place. Share that with your friends as well. Maybe we'd have an opportunity to have them tune in, find some answers to the questions. And if there's any way we can serve you, again, myontrackretirement.com will help you get those answers that you're looking for. Thanks so much for joining us. We're looking forward to seeing you next week.
And remember, get on track, stay on track, and have a confident retirement. We'll see you next time.